21 Studios and the 21 Convention and co-founder of the RedMag Group. Today on the show with me, I have DDJ from Miss Andrew Today, also a frequent and new panelist on the RedMag Group every week on Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. DDJ, welcome to today's show, today's interview.
Hey, man, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
Always, man. Fuck yeah. And so, I'm bringing DDJ on today, guys, because he has filed a major lawsuit against Google and YouTube with relevance to tech tyranny and censorship on YouTube and social media platforms. So DDJ, can you kind of go through an outline of what's going on with that lawsuit that just got filed the other day?
Yeah, so I filed a lawsuit on the 22nd, which is yesterday, and just kind of like the brief elevator speech version of the lawsuit. Basically, I'm suing under 10 separate causes, but the main 5 are under free speech under 42 USC 1983. And I'm also suing for discrimination based on 42 USC 2000A, which is a public accommodation law. And then I am challenging Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act as unconstitutional. And I'm also suing Google and YouTube for fraud. And I'm trying to get the courts to enter a declaratory judgment finding that Google and YouTube's contracts are unconscionable, which means that basically they're unfair and the court should rule them unenforceable.
You mentioned Section 230. Is that the thing that I've seen Ted Cruz and other senators talk about in the Senate with
Yes.
protecting the platforms from any kind of blowback from lawsuits and stuff?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and why is this, we're going to go through it in a minute, but why is this lawsuit unique? Because obviously others have tried to sue in California and stuff against Google and YouTube for deplatforming. James Damore comes to mind and a few others. I think some of those are ongoing too, but it's like, what happened to them and where are they going? So why is it different?
Well, let's talk about James Damore for a second, because he actually happens to be the exception to the rule. So The thing about James Damore was that he sued for wrongful termination, which is a little bit different. But what makes his lawsuit compelling is the way his attorney pleaded that lawsuit, but also the fact that he had to work with arbitration clauses. See, he had them dead to rights. He collected all kinds of data and information. So of the particular lawsuits that were there, he had more insider information than almost anybody up to that point. Pardon me. Now, with that said, the thing about James Damore is that they went through arbitration with his case, and he ended up settling. And the reason he ended up settling is because his was the strongest case against Google for discrimination on the whole employment discrimination side. Now, his case also, even though he's no longer a part of it, the other plaintiffs in that case, they're pursuing forward. And of the cases that are active right now, his has been the most successful. Now, let's go ahead and compare that to, say, some of the other cases, like the Laura Loomer case, I should say, the Prager case, and some of the other cases where they mention free speech. So under 1983, one of the main ways that you hold somebody accountable for free speech type violations is you have to demonstrate some kind of government interference. That's been the main failing point of most of these lawsuits. Prager got blown out of the water with a motion to dismiss. Laura Loomer just lost a motion to dismiss. Now she's in the Court of Appeals, and she almost lost her ability to appeal the other day, but the judge said, no, we're going to go ahead and let you appeal, even though we don't think your case has a lot of merit. The difference between my case and their cases when it comes to the First Amendment claims is that I'm actually claiming that Google is a government actor. So they never did. They never even alleged it. But if you look at my complaint, the base complaint itself is 67 pages, but with all my exhibits and my evidence that I attach to it, it goes up to over 500 pages.
Nice.
Now, the reason that that's important is because I'm saying that Google is a state actor for the government of China. They are a state actor for the European Union.
Nice.
And they are a state actor for the Christchurch Call signatory governments, which there's 17 other governments. Now, the thing that these governments have in common, they've outlawed hate speech. And so what I'm saying is that Google, in their individual capacity, is enforcing foreign governments' hate speech laws on American citizens on American soil. And that's a violation of our First Amendment constitutional rights. And in my case, it's not only a right, it violates my rights of freedom of speech, it violates my right to choose what religion I want to choose without any kind of retaliation. And it also impacts my right to associate. So a lot of people talk about political discrimination. And in California, in the state of California, and in Washington, D.C., there are political discrimination causes of action when it comes to those types of things, but nowhere else in the country. So with that said, what I'm saying is that we can talk about political discrimination under First Amendment with regard to freedom to associate. You should not get political pushback or First Amendment, civil rights pushback for who you associate with.
Yeah.
You want to be a conservative, you be a conservative. You want to be a religious fundamentalist, you be a religious fundamentalist. But you can't be discriminated against those or on those grounds. Now, the reason that this is important to the manosphere is because people who associate with the manosphere, they're getting their speech silenced.
Yeah.
The whole red pill community, the whole manosphere community, doesn't matter what tribe you're a part of, you're getting your speech silenced, and that's a serious problem.
Specifically, the red pill community on Reddit was quarantined about a year ago, maybe a little more. And that was about 300,000 subscribers they had at the time. It's all quarantined, it's all fucked up now. And it's been falling apart since then because of that.
Right. So with that said, let me kind of, talk about the lawsuit a little bit. Like I said, it was filed yesterday. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen so you can kind of see the lawsuit a little bit. I'm going to jump around a bit because there's a lot of facts. Okay.
Also, for those of you viewing, there is a link in the top link in the description to this video. You'll see the link to the full lawsuit, everything he has on site at missandreatoday.com. So top link in the description to view this yourself. Yeah.
And anybody who wants to look at the lawsuit, definitely download it.
Yeah.
Share it, give it to your elected officials. If you live in a state where the Attorney General is getting ready to investigate Google and YouTube and big tech, this is something that's there. Now, here's the other piece.
Right off the bat, why did you file this in Colorado rather than somewhere else like California or Florida or anywhere else?
We're going to get there in just a second.
Okay.
First and foremost, and this is a big one for me, I've doxed myself in order to file this lawsuit.
Damn.
Now, the reason this is important for me is because when my book first came out, I got targeted by feminists. Feminists were trying to dox me. So I doxed myself because fuck you, that's why. I had white supremacists try to dox me. They couldn't do it. Feminists tried to dox me. People within the MGTOW community tried to dox me. They couldn't do it. I've always believed the idea of hiding in plain sight. So I just been telling everybody that my name is something different than what it is. And of course, everybody was thinking that and they just believed it. So, first rule of war is deception. Fuck you, have a nice day.
Yeah.
So with that said, the reason I filed it in Colorado is because that's where I live. Okay. So now the other reason why it's fun to file in Colorado is because I'm told the 10th Circuit is one of the most conservative circuits in the country. So I have home field advantage.
Got it.
Now, with that said, as you can see, the case number is right there on the top. Now I'm going to jump down. Now there's 47 pages of facts, but we're just going to go through them real quick. Okay, so the introduction. Now, here's a mistake most people make. And one of the mistakes is under jurisdiction. So YouTube always fights for jurisdiction. Google fights for jurisdiction. But the issue is this. In Colorado, if you look at statement 10 here as I scroll through, you'll see that they have a significant presence here. That's one of the ways you establish personal jurisdiction. They have a $130 million, 200,000 plus square foot facility that employs over 800 workers in Boulder, Colorado. That's enough to establish personal jurisdiction. The other reason that they have jurisdiction is because obviously I'm a resident here as well, as you can see, if you can see the highlight there in a second. And then, of course, venue is proper for the same reasons. Now, as far as the parties are concerned, I talk about that a little bit, scrolling through. Now, here's the facts. Now, this is number one. Google is a Chinese state actor. Now, part of the reason for that is Dragonfly, their censored search engine. But the other reason is because of the 2017 National Intelligence Law entered by China, which states that any organization in China that operates in China falls under the jurisdiction of their intelligence, and they actually have to work with the government. They're required by law to it. It imposes a duty on them. Now, Google maintains 4 offices in China, and they employ hundreds of people. And in addition to that, they're working on AI. So they have to work with the Chinese government by law. They're duty bound to do so. And I believe that they're pervasively intertwined, which is what we are alleging. And
I remember too reading about this, and even there were some Google employees a while ago who were really pissed about this. I think a few of them resigned. It was really super fucked up.
Yeah, and that's the point. It's extremely fucked up. So this is the way I think that we talk about China as a state actor. The other problem that I see, though, is they're also operating as a European Union state actor. You see, they talk about their trusted flagger program, which I'm going to kind of get into here. And this is the thing that really a lot of people miss. So when you look at the trusted flagger program, the British government is a YouTube trusted flagger. Okay.
Wow.
You want to talk about pervasively intertwined? You have foreign governments responsible for enforcing hate speech policies on YouTube. So you have foreign interference with US free speech rights right here. And Google admits it. This is an article from The Verge from 2014. Now, in addition to that, they say less than 10 of these slots as of 2014 were filled by government agencies. But that also means that more than just the British government is involved. So there may be other governments involved. Now, the other issue is this. They created what's called a code of conduct between the European Union and Google. And part of that code of conduct is that they're supposed to share information with other tech companies who were part of the signatory group, as well as the governments. This could implicate antitrust issues. This could implicate monopoly issues, but it could also implicate a variety of other issues as well. Because you see, even with the Chinese government issue, by law, Google is supposed to be listed as a foreign agent. And they haven't registered. And the same thing with the European Union. This is a joint enterprise agreement. And what's important about this is that Google and YouTube were involved in the creation of the code of conduct. Now, the code of conduct was created specifically to enforce hate speech online. These countries have laws against hate speech where you can go to prison for hate speech. And they are enforcing these laws, these foreign laws, on United States soil.
Let's clarify real quick for the average viewer. Hate speech in the United States has been ruled by the Supreme Court to be completely unlawful and unconstitutional, or any kind of discrimination against hate speech. There's no such thing in America.
We're gonna get to that in a second. Let me jump down to that now. Let me see if I can find a good quote for that, because there's some pretty good quotes here. Give me a second here.
Got it. That wasn't even that long ago. That was declared right by the Supreme Court.
Well, yeah,
2000s.
Yeah, so in I want to say this was in 2016. This was Mattel versus Tam, and the United States Supreme Court Justice Alito stated in pertinent part, speech may not be banned on the grounds that it expresses ideas that offend. Speech that demeans on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, age, disability, or any other similar ground is hateful. But the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thought we hate. So free speech is constantly being attacked in the courts, and the courts are constantly telling the people who attack our free speech rights to go fuck themselves, because hate speech is not a thing.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I bring this up, we're going to jump away, but so there's a lot of facts here, but I think the big facts are this. You know, the Chinese government issue is a fact. I'm going to jump around a little bit. Google operates as an EU state actor. They're pervasively intertwined. The Christchurch call, which happened after the New Zealand shooting. Let me see if I can get down. There's a lot of facts, as you see. I'm scrolling through.
Yeah.
The Christchurch call, which is section 4.3 of page 17 of the complaint.
Let's back up a second here, too, for the average viewer who's just totally uneducated on what this means. This document we're looking at is the first public complaint, the first official document that got filed for this lawsuit, correct?
Yeah, this is actually the amended complaint, but I had to change one sentence, but it is like 99.99% is accurate as a first complaint. This is the first amended complaint, but it says the same things.
Got it. So this is the first official motion to get the ball rolling, is what that is.
Correct. This is a complaint. We'll be filing a summons as well as our cover sheet in a few days. We'll be serving YouTube and Google next week. So we wanted to get out and talk to people about it. I'll be setting up a GoFundMe account for this to help fund the lawsuit, to help fund the attorney. I'm not doing this pro se. I do have an attorney on board. I did do a lot of the work myself on this, a lot of the legal research and everything else. Got the attorney to kind of provide oversight and got this thing going. But I mean, this is a huge suit.
And now, for those who don't know you, you spent years as a paralegal working with attorneys, right?
Yeah, close to 15 years, and all I did was litigation and appellate work, in addition to civil rights work as well.
Okay.
So, pardon me, I had to get a drink there. Now, as far as the multi-state actor, after the New Zealand shooting, I think she was the New Zealand Prime Minister. She put together this thing called the Christchurch Call. Now, this was organized. Her name is Jacinda Ardern, and she also organized it with the child abuse victim and French President Emmanuel Macron. Oh yeah. You didn't know he was banging his teacher when he was a kid.
Oh yeah, that's his wife now. Yeah.
Yeah. He was banging his teacher, who became his wife, and so now she's like the crypt keeper. So
It's a dark world, man. Dark world.
Oh, dude, the cuck is real. I'm telling you, man, the thirst. Oh, man. So anyway, we fast forward, and 17 governments have alleged that to be signatories here, but also Google, Microsoft, Twitter, YouTube, Dailymotion, and Facebook, as well as Quant and Amazon signed this agreement as well. The United States was asked to sign, and they told everybody to go fuck themselves because, according to The Guardian, they state the U.S. has reportedly refused to sign up because of concerns about freedom of speech. Huh.
Golly gee. Golly fucking gee.
Yeah, it's a Scooby-Doo mystery. So we're talking about that. So I'm going to jump around a little bit more. The reason why this is important and the reason why this is so damning is because the Christchurch Call basically tells the tech companies are getting together, and what they're doing is they are sharing information. They're creating common databases. They're not only sharing it with the other governments, the 17 signatory governments, they are sharing it with other tech companies. That's classic definition of potential antitrust. You look at, like, remember when Alex Jones was taken down by everybody?
Yeah. And
payment processors wouldn't work with him? How much you want to bet some of those payment processors were Christchurch Call signatory agreements?
Yep.
Okay? How much you want to bet? I mean, that's classic antitrust. And the thing is that nobody's actually ever said it as much. Nobody has challenged Google or YouTube in any kind of meaningful way on the Christchurch Call or the European Union Code of Conduct. Now, here's the other thing. Many of these lawsuits that come out, they don't use these news articles that we find in the lawsuit. That's what makes 4.4 of the lawsuit so important. Because 4.4, Google enforces foreign hate speech laws and opposes free speech in the United States. This whole section is based on the good censor that was released to Breitbart. Okay. And I can go through and add this, and Christchurch or Christchurch, sorry, Dollhouse, whatever. I'm looking at the chats. So anyway, if we go down here, we talk about the good censor, and we're going through here. This is what Google advertises. They advertise freedom of expression, freedom of information, freedom of opportunity, freedom to belong, but they don't do any of those things. And they admit to the legitimacy of the document to The Verge. So I talk about that as well. So there are over in this lawsuit, there are probably 60 or 70, probably closer to 60 to be fair, exhibits attached to the lawsuit, because there's so much evidence here right out of the gate. And part of this is that I don't want anybody to assume that I'm making conclusory statements. I'm actually only sharing facts, and in many cases, I'm quoting them one after another. So now we go through, and I'm going to try to jump around a little bit. And again, this is the good censor. Now, the other thing is Google's contracts are unconscionable. Now, again, that means they're unfair. One of the reasons that they're unfair is because of unfair bargaining power. Now, what that means is that Google, and well, YouTube specifically, is used by over 73% of all US adults. It is the second largest social media platform in the world, right after Facebook, and it is the second most popular website on the internet, according to Alexa. So they have unfair bargaining power. But more importantly, their contract is a take it or leave it type of contract. You can't negotiate with them. So what that means is it's a contract of adhesion. Now, in addition to that, their contract of adhesion says they can change the terms at any time without any notice to you at all. Now, the reason, Bengoshi Biyushi, yeah, I understand that, but I do know for a fact that I got hammered for the New Zealand stuff prior to the Christchurch agreement as well. Just kind of an FYI. I think they were in part of negotiation, because that's the other thing, to jump back up. The EU agreement, the Code of Conduct, as well as the Christchurch Call, Google and YouTube admit to helping create that. They probably were working on it for months behind the scenes before anything came out in public. And they probably used the Alex Jones deplatforming as like a beta test to see what would happen.
Huh.
That's my assumption here. I have no facts right now of that, but you know what? It might be something that we look at in discovery. So with that in mind, let's move forward. So, as they come through here, all these terms of service, their competitors use the same terms that allow them to change the terms at any time without notice. When you allow this to happen, what ends up happening is that you have an unconscionable contract with no control, and it constitutes what's called unfair surprise. This is important in law because it's one of the ways you determine a contract unconscionable. First is unequal bargaining power, which we've already talked about. Second is going to be unfair surprise. And then the third is that there is no meaningful choice. YouTube is the largest video platform in the world. If you want to do business on video and you are an independent video producer like me, like you, like many other people, you have to work with YouTube because they all have the same clause. They all have that terms of service that says they can change it at any time. So that was important to make sure that was included. And then finally, this is a big one. There's a lot of people out there that have been talking a lot of shit about how 230 is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. You look at YouTube, you look at Google, you look at Facebook and Twitter, how they silence free speech left and right. And they're able to do it because Section 230 of USC 47 gives them immunity. It gives them civil immunity from civil liability for violating somebody's constitutional rights. It's even written in the law that even if the material is constitutionally protected, they're immune from civil liability. So we have to attack it because they can just file a motion to dismiss based on this and we have nothing. And this is what's called constitutionally overbroad. Constitutional challenges, as far as how you do them, they're well-settled case law all throughout the country. And so that's what we did. We researched this to make sure we were all on the same page. And we wanted to make sure that we attacked this because it was overbroad, because it was vague. And then, yeah, it's almost like surprise anal, Bengoshi. Yeah, exactly. And then in addition to that, you know, we talk about how it's internally inconsistent. You see, the reason that they created the 230 exception under the Communications Decency Act was to promote free speech. It wasn't to silence it. But yet that's exactly what YouTube, Google, and big tech are doing, is they are using this as a hammer to silence free speech. Now let's move on.
In exchange for that immunity, they were supposed to not act like a publisher. They're supposed to let people post and publish anything they want on the platform for the most part.
Correct.
But that's been totally perverted and destroyed at this point.
Well, and let's talk about that, because if you go back to the Good Censor, and you can see this on the Good Censor document, and I include this and I talk about it in a lawsuit, even YouTube and Google admit that they're now publishers and they're not facilitators. See, it used to be that they were called quote unquote platforms and they would facilitate other people's speech. But now what they're doing is they're publishing their own speech and they're competing with the people who are pushing their own speech on there. And so in a way to kind of unfairly compete with them, they're censoring people they don't like, and then they're boosting people that they do. And we're going to get into that later on. But I think that it's important to kind of talk about that as well, because you're absolutely correct there. Now, here's a new one. No one has ever done this yet, and I'm the only one online who's talked about it in this way. YouTube is a place of public accommodation under 42 USC 2008, which is another civil rights law. They're basically, I'm saying that they are a theater and they are a place of public exhibition. Now, in order for you to qualify under this law, you have to be a place of commerce. So Google sells movies, they rent movies, they sell TV shows, they rent TV shows. You can subscribe via YouTube Red. They're absolutely a place of commerce. And what's interesting is that under the Americans with Disabilities Act, multiple courts have ruled websites are places of public accommodation. And the Department of Justice is actually admitted they are places of public accommodation in a letter in 2018 to Congress from the Department of Justice Office of the Assistant Attorney General. And I have a couple quotes here. You can look at the lawsuit. This is about page 32 at this point. And it kind of goes into that point. What we're asking the courts to do is to say that YouTube and Google are places of public accommodation for civil rights purposes as well. Because I believe that as a patriotic American who follows the Christian faith, I believe they've discriminated against me based on my religion and national origin. See, a lot of people don't talk about discrimination in the context of national origin discrimination. I think I'm the only one who's actually ever brought it up in those terms anyway. So there are protections against national origin discrimination. And if you're an American and you wear a hat that says "Make America Great Again," or you wear, you fly a flag proudly in your yard, an American flag, you shouldn't be discriminated against for that. Yeah. That's unfair. Now we're going to move on. I have some facts related to what they've done to me. And then I'm going to scroll down here to another gem, because this was brought out by Project Veritas recently, and I used it in my lawsuit. Give me a second here. Scrolling down. This is the scrolling scene of the video. Maybe. Here we go. So the interesting thing about Project Veritas, and here is something that no one else has talked about. Okay, so everybody's talked about this thing called Twiddler. Now, what Twiddler is, it is a program that allows Google and YouTube to boost content they like say they like a video and they want it to go viral. They can boost it and force it to go viral and have everybody see it. They can put it at the top of the search engines. They can do all these things. They have a thing called real-time boost that helps with that as well. And they also
probably be something very bland and mainstream, like a Stephen Colbert video or some mainstream news video, right?
It would be that, or it would be something that promotes socialism, or something that promotes, the Muslim religion,
feminism and shit.
Feminism, stuff that hates Trump. Anything that promotes civil rights gets dropped, because you see, Twiddler not only can boost material, it can also demote it so no one ever sees it. Okay, so let's say somebody doesn't like my video on will Sundar Pichai get arrested because he lied to Congress, which I put out. So that video gets 2,000 views when it should probably have 100,000. Now, again, it's one of those scenarios. I was one of the first people to talk about it, but that video got buried, and I believe Twiddler and some of these other tools were part of that. But here's the thing that nobody talks about, and this is something that I do, and this is the most important takeaway, I think, of this particular lawsuit that no one's going to discuss, and they're not going to know how to discuss it. Let's say you have an AdSense account. Let's say you're the Ford Motor Company, okay? And I'm going to put my Ford car ads on a video or a website, and I have an AdSense account. Now, if you guys, for those who don't know, when you get monetized by YouTube, you have to get monetized through an AdSense account, okay? Now, let's say YouTube has some viral video of trans grooming of children, right? So they're doing pedophile grooming of trans kids or kids to be trans to make them more vulnerable to trans indoctrination. They artificially inflate it and they make that video go viral. Now that video gets 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 million views. What they're doing is they're charging Ford Motor Company extra money for those views because they've artificially inflated how popular that video is. Now that video is viral, Ford Motor Company may end up paying 10 times as much for marketing on YouTube or through Google than they would otherwise. This is the same is true for websites. You have ads on websites, and they're websites that YouTube likes. They boost them up. And since it's pay per click or pay per view or pay for whatever, now all of a sudden these advertising companies, they're paying 10, 15, 20 times more than what they would normally pay because YouTube has artificially inflated the traffic. And they're getting no return on this, on their advertising. There's been studies done where social media marketing is not translated into additional revenue. So artificially boosting content, it robs advertisers of revenue, or not of revenue, I'm sorry, but of ad costs by artificially inflating their ad costs. That's not fair to advertisers. Now let's take it on the other direction. If you artificially drop or demote videos or websites and you conceal them, let's say on page 20 of Google, or you conceal them to where when you try to search for them on YouTube, you can't find them. Now you're robbing YouTubers of ad revenue because you're concealing their video and you're doing it in such a way that people never even see it. And the Twiddler tool through the most recent Project Veritas leak proves it. That's huge antitrust. That's huge fraud on a federal level. And this happened to me too. The reason I bring it up is because I'm personally damaged by this. I can show where people are getting unsubscribed from my channel. They're not being notified of my videos. And you can see the videos, the number counts are drastically dropping. And it's not because nobody's watching them. And then on top of that, YouTube and Google are turning around and they're going back through and they're stealing views from YouTubers. Well, when you're stealing views from YouTubers, you're also stealing ad revenue from them. So that's something important to think about. But the other thing that's important to think about, and this is something that a lot of people didn't realize. Let me see if I can find it here. Give me just a second here. Here we go. I did a video in December 2018 called The SPLC Funds Terrorists. Now, Google has donated $250,000 to the Southern Poverty Law Center. But in addition to that, the Southern Poverty Law Center is a YouTube trusted flagger. And on top of all that, Google pays its employees 6 months' wages to work with ad partners. To work with NGO partners. The Southern Poverty Law Center is one of these nonprofit NGO partners.
NGO means non-governmental organization, something like that?
Correct.
Got it.
So 501c3s. So Google is not only giving money to the Southern Poverty Law Center, who in turn is giving it directly to Antifa, which I point out in my December 2018 video, but they're actually assigning Google employees to work full-time for the Southern Poverty Law Center for 6 months at a time.
Antifa is about to be declared a terrorist organization too, it looks like.
And if they are, then that means that any organization that funds them is aiding and abetting terrorism. So once that happens, this is why I bring this up. Wow. This is important because Google is using the Southern Poverty Law Center and they're using 501c3s as pass-through agencies to fund Antifa terrorism. That's a problem. Damn. So, and again, I mean, it's, you know, these are major national interest issues, and these are things that people are not talking about. To my knowledge, I'm the only one who's ever accused the SPLC of funding Antifa, and I can prove it. So that's the other issue that's there. So those things are important. So let's talk about the causes of action. Obviously, we talk about the First Amendment under 1983. We go down here some more. We talk about the second cause of action about national origin discrimination under subsection 2000A. And then again, we go back up here. We talk about how 230 is unconstitutional. And again, you guys can read all these on your own. Definitely, definitely share this with everybody. You know other YouTubers that are dealing with this. You know people in the media that are dealing with this, alt media. I mean, the reality is that it doesn't matter how big the YouTube beef is. We all need to be fighting for our free speech rights as American citizens.
That's right.
Let's put our differences aside and let's work together, protect our rights, and then we can go back to whatever beefs are still left. All right. So we go to the fourth. Go ahead.
Question: does the Constitution of the state of Colorado have any relevance to the case or any influence?
I don't know. I don't think it'll have any influence per se, other than being a positive impact. But this is a federal case. It's filed in federal court. It's not filed in state court.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. The fourth position here is fraud. And where I'm basically saying is Google has committed fraud. Google and YouTube commit fraud. They say they're a free speech platform. They advertise it. I pled it. They're not. And then on top of that, they conceal the fact that their trusted flaggers are foreign governments and agents of foreign governments enforcing foreign hate speech laws on U.S. citizens. That's fraud. They don't tell anybody about that. And when they change their terms of service, they never notify anybody. That's unfair surprise. Yeah. Just like what's his name said earlier, surprise butt sex. So then the other side of it is that anytime you enter a contract, you have an implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. They've breached that. And so I go on and I talk about that. And then you go on a little farther and we have Google's contracts are unconscionable. Now, part of the reason I'm doing that is so that I can avoid forced arbitration in California. But the other reason is because they are in fact unconscionable and it's unfair. So we can continue on. The Lanham Act. Now, this is a competition act. Basically, I say that because Google and YouTube make videos on their own, they compete with me. Now, the other side of this is that, hi, Lord Inquisitor, I got 40 watching right now. And again, this was there was no notice given on this. This is an on-the-fly stream. That's not bad for that. All right, we're going to move forward. And the eighth cause of action, Google does not meet the good faith requirements of 230. Now, here's the thing. If Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is held to be constitutional, there is still a good faith requirement under 230 to get immunity. And I'm saying that even if it is held constitutional, there is no good faith on the part of Google and YouTube, and so they shouldn't get that immunity. I'm one of the few people that's actually alleged this as a cause of action by itself. And then finally, tortious interference with economic advantage, because Google and YouTube have attacked my channel. They've demonetized my channel. They demonetized a lot of my videos prior to demonetizing the whole channel. They've concealed videos. They've removed videos. They've interfered with my ability to earn the money I would have normally earned had none of that happened. And a lot of people are complaining about this. I'm just one of the few that's suing over it.
On 21 Studios, we've had hundreds of videos demonetized. Same with the Redman Group. They get demonetized almost every time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And then my 10th cause of action is motion for declaratory relief. Now, basically, I'll talk about that in the prayer of relief section because I think it's important to read. So, number one, Google, YouTube are a joint interest, pervasively intertwined state actors and agents of foreign governments, and in their individual capacity, violate and continue to violate Lewis's First Amendment rights to free speech and freedom of affiliation under color of foreign law. 2, Google's websites, YouTube.com, Google.com, are places of public accommodation. They're online theaters and or places of public exhibition within the meaning of USC subsection 2000A. And they've discriminated against me based on my religion and my national origin as a patriotic Christian and American citizen. 3, Google's hate speech policies are used to censor American citizens on their face, are un-American, and they serve to chill my free speech rights, and they constitute an unconscionable contract clause as a matter of constitutional law, public policy, and national public interest. 4, Google YouTube's contractual clause allowing them to alter the terms of their contracts at will without notification and forcing me to pre-stipulate to any and all of their contractual alternatives constitutes an unconscionable contract clause and is unenforceable as a matter of law and public policy interest. And then, of course, subsection 230 of the Communications Decency Act is both facially and as applied unconstitutional due to being overbroad, vague, and internally inconsistent. And then in the alternative, Google YouTube doesn't meet the good faith requirement for any kind of immunity from civil liability under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And then in addition to that, Google has committed fraud by misrepresenting me and the American people that they don't maintain, or I'm sorry, misrepresenting to me and the American people that they don't maintain blacklists or artificially promote, demote content of users. And then, of course, any other judgments the court wants. Now, I'm also asking for Google, the courts, the federal courts, to enter an injunction, which is like a restraining order, to prevent YouTube from restricting, demonetizing, or otherwise censoring videos from me or any American citizens on YouTube.com or any other website.
That is awesome. That's fucking great.
Okay, and then the other part of the injunction is to cease and desist enforcement of hate speech policies against me or any other American citizen. And then on top of that, to require them to publicly disclose which foreign governments and agencies work with them as trusted flaggers or in any other capacity. And finally, to cease and desist artificially promoting and demoting any other content on its platforms. And then, of course, I'm asking for damages to be determined at trial. However, I am looking for no less than $5 billion in punitive.
This is fucking great. The fucking balls to put this together and file this it's fantastic, man. It's really making my Friday. This is great.
Well, and that's the thing is like when you look at this whole thing, right, and you look at this whole scenario, this is the kind of lawsuit, in my view, that other people should have already filed already, because all the information is publicly available. But the point is this, is that the lawsuit is of national public interest, and big tech as a group, as a cartel, has been attacking free speech left and right. So Dollhouse asks the question, your perspective is to come back after it is dismissed? No, my perspective is if the trial court dismisses it, we're going to take it to the Court of Appeals and to the Supreme Court. This is not a fight that ends at the trial court. You see, the biggest mistake that people make, and I've been saying this for years online, is that you need to prepare for your appeal on day one. And this is what we've done. We have prepared to take this to the Court of Appeals. We have prepared to take this to the United States Supreme Court on day one. I don't really give a shit what the trial court does, because I'll tell you what's going to happen. If we win at the trial court level, Google and YouTube are going to appeal. If we lose at the trial court level, we are going to appeal. That's just the reality. This is going to be a case that's going to get to the Supreme Court regardless, because this is a type of case that has massive public interest. And the other thing that I didn't tell anybody about, so it turns out that there's a little known law that when you challenge a federal law as unconstitutional, you have to notify the Attorney General of the United States and give them an opportunity to either intercede in the lawsuit, either to help you determine it as unconstitutional or to fight you on it. What this means is that this entire complaint, including the stuff about Antifa and the fraud and everything else, is going to cross the United States Attorney General Barr. It's going to cross his desk. So he's going to read it, which means Trump's going to know about it, which means everybody's going to know about it, because we're challenging the law as unconstitutional. And a lot of people have realized that the law is flawed where it is, and there has to be some changes. Now, I'm not saying that this is the perfect lawsuit. I'm not even saying that we're going to win. But what I am saying is that it's not a frivolous lawsuit. It's a lawsuit that's basically taking well-settled case law and applying them to websites and applying them to the cyber age, because that's what we need to be doing. We can't be using old antiquated ideas without trying to evolve to an internet age. And I think that's the biggest mistake that a lot of prior lawsuits have made, is they haven't pled this stuff out, because the rules of pleading these complaints have changed, and the way things are done has changed. So, there's a lot of new things that we're bringing into this lawsuit. It's a very novel concept when it comes to a lot of this stuff, but we understand that it's going to be an uphill battle. And more importantly, though, we also need to understand this. If you do the same old thing over and over and over again, and it fails every time, to continue to try it is insanity. So we are trying to absolutely win. And like I said, in the next few days, we're going to be putting up a GoFundMe so people can donate to the legal fees, and we can, basically help fund the lawsuit as we're fighting it. Because this isn't just for me, and this isn't just for, to dox myself and to make a bunch of money and ride off into the sunset. This is about free speech. We have a way where we can give the power of civil rights online back to American citizens. And I think that's the most important piece, because American citizens have been silenced too much, and a lot of people feel like they're on the verge of giving up. And you see it everywhere. And I think that one of the reasons I filed,
I've been publishing, content, videos, and conferences for 13 years now. And as an entrepreneur and a publisher, I do feel like I'm walking on eggshells half the time, like an abusive relationship or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't always say what I want and publish what I want, not because of some law, but because of these fucking companies being like, covert little scumbags. And you don't know what's going to happen. You might get demonetized. You might get a copyright. You might get not a copyright, but a community strike, or you might just have your whole fucking channel deleted, Alex Jones style. It sucks.
Right.
It's horrible. It needs to stop.
Exactly. And I agree completely. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because you know what? We are a nation of laws, and unlike every other country in the world, we have a constitution that protects our right to bear arms. It protects our freedom of speech. It protects our right to affiliate with whoever we want, whether you're a Christian or an atheist, whether you're a misogynist or, an emasculated cuck. You have a right to associate with other cucks if you're a cuck. That's all I'm saying. If you want to associate with some cuck who misinforms everybody, not that I'm pointing fingers at anybody specific, that's your right to do. Hashtag Cuck Lives Matter. But what I'm saying is that on the other hand, if you want to hang out with people and you want to fight for your constitutional right to hang out with masculine men, like, say, I don't know, the 21 Convention, well, you should have a right to do that too. Yeah. So the point is that at the end of the day, you have to be able to exercise your rights free from discrimination. And that means that foreign governments who enforce hate speech laws as crimes and criminalize people who speak hate speech, we can't allow that shit here.
Well, let's just be clear here. Hate speech is free speech.
Yes.
This is like, the most simplistic, way to put it. Speaking your mind and offending people. That's the most important. Hate speech is the most important speech to protect. Stuff offensive and radical and controversial, to the extent you're not advocating for like open violence, which no one is. We just want to fucking have an idea and talk about it.
Well, hate speech policies by definition are un-American.
That's right. I agree. Yep.
So that's really, this is my lawsuit. This is what's going on. Like I said, if anybody who's watching this video, go to my website, download the lawsuit itself, download all the exhibits. They're in a zip file. It's together. When you put it together, it's real big. Okay. So, but download it, get copies of it. Feel free to upload and mirror them. Send them to your attorney generals. The attorney generals are getting ready to investigate big tech. Send them to them.
Yep.
Send them to your politicians. Send them to Ted Cruz. Tweet it to Donald Trump. Tweet it to everybody, because this is something that if we all get together and do this, this is a way we make change. Because, the thing I've noticed online, and I was talking to my attorney about this the other day, I said, there's a lot of people out there that are like, well, I disagree with that, so I'm just going to get angry and I'm going to make a video about it. Or, I'm going to get angry and I'm going to show somebody else, and I'm going to start a Twitter war over some bullshit. And it's like, none of that shit matters. That's masturbation without a payoff at the end, right? Yeah. You might get popular about it, and you might, you can virtue signal. But the thing is, the reality is, at the end of the day, you have to do something offline too. Okay. I had to wipe the Cheeto dust off my shoulders, and I had to create a complaint to make this happen. And frankly, and this, Anthony, because I've been to your house. I take my identity very seriously.
Yep.
I take who I am, my identity, very seriously. And when it comes to this sort of thing,
I don't know if actually everybody knew that we've met before in real life, which I don't think these guys know that, but we have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we've met, and that's the thing is that, you know, Anthony's been in my corner this entire time, and even though we don't agree on everything, we don't have to. But the thing is that, you know, when something of national importance comes up, sometimes you have to make some sacrifices in order to make it right. That's what our troops do. You know, when you sign up for the military and you become a soldier, and you know, our military veterans, they sacrifice their lives, their families, and everything else to defend our country. So this is one way I can do the same thing in order to defend our country for what I perceive as enemies of our Constitution, both foreign and domestic.
Yeah, you're putting your balls on the line. I mean, mad respected. Real life stuff is the way to go. Always offline, you know, we know superior to online. So fuck yeah, man. I'm glad I can promote it and support it. And as soon as the GoFundMe is ready, I'll make sure I put that on the community tabs on Twitter and stuff like that. So fuck yeah.
I'm not familiar with the GE news because my head has been down doing this complaint and getting it ready to roll.
Got it.
But yeah, the other thing you guys can do too is if you don't download the lawsuit, definitely share the website link, which will be in the description of this video. You know, share it with everybody, tweet it out, send it to Facebook, every group you can, shoot it to people like Alex Jones, Alt Media. We'll be talking a little bit about it tomorrow with Stefan Molyneux, probably for, you know, a quick 5 minutes while in the beginning of the stream. So, you know, just know that there are options here for you guys to do it. This is an option. This is a place where all of us can come together, regardless of what tribe of the manosphere you are, whether you like DDJ, whether you hate DDJ, whether you think it's great I've doxed myself, or you think it's horrible that I've doxed myself. Listen, put all that shit aside. That's childhood shit. Let's protect our country. Let's protect our freedom of speech, and let's come together and make this shit happen. Because I'll tell you what, the more support that this lawsuit gets, whether you help fund it with the GoFundMe, whether you help promote it by putting it on social media platforms and by sharing it with your politicians, or you download it and host it on your own web pages, all that helps. Every little bit helps at this point, because this is the way we protect our free speech rights. This is the way we hold big tech accountable and foreign government accountable for interfering with the American way of life. Because I'll tell you what, there has been foreign interference in our elections, and it's through companies like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Google, through enforcing hate speech policies on American citizens, on American politicians, and on American public officials. And frankly, it's time it stops.
Amen to that, man. Fuck yeah. Well, if there's nothing else, let's wrap up today's interview. I really appreciate your time, man, coming on today. And everyone else tuning in, short notice like this. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Take care.
Cool. DDJ, I'll see you tomorrow, man. Everyone else, see you soon. Peace out.